Okay. Alderman Senate, are you interested in being the clerk?
Yeah, I have no problem with it if there's no objection from the committee.
All right, that sounds good. Alderman Thibodeau, do you have any thoughts, yes or no?
I have no objection.
You didn't have a secret yearning to press this button over here and call names over? Okay. All right. So the motion on the table is to nominate Alderman Senate as the clerk. Seeing no other candidates available, why don't we just say yea or nay on that? All in favor of Alderman Senate becoming our clerk, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, Tim, it looks like you have a.
Do I need to move
Wanna
seats?
Come right up here, yep.
Okay.
You have to take your name tag.
Yeah, bring your name tag too, she's
Okay.
correct.
Did you start the meeting early?
Yeah.
We started at
Just
7.
hold it.
Yeah, no, it's 7 right now.
The computer lies.
Huh?
The computer lies, yeah. So Alderman Senate has just been elected as the clerk. Note that part of the computer at 7:01, Alderman Kelly is coming in.
You think you can snatch your,
Oh,
big,
All right, so this is
For
the
record,
recording button,
Alderman
which is
Kelly
live.
Walked in at 7?
Alderman Kelly,
Yes.
question?
I was just noting for the record that I'm here.
Okay. I'm using this just to be consistent, which is 7:01, but I mean, it would have been someone needs a laser gun to determine any difference. So Alderman Senate, that is the recording button that you would normally be doing. There's a script in front of you, and it says when you would be recording votes. Typically, if we ask for a roll call vote or a voice vote, then you'd have to call each individual person. For otherwise, we would just call all in favor, all opposed, and you just record the general motion.
Perfect.
Okay. Oh, you have a secondary role too. As a legally blind person, if I'm missing somebody with their hand up, you have to be like, hey, over there.
I'll nudge you.
Okay, so first order of business beyond that. We have a public hearing for the PY 2020 to 2024 Consolidated Plan for the City of Nashua's Community Development Block Grant, CDBG, and Home Investment Partnerships Program, programs. Mr. Long, would you like to give a quick intro to that?
Thank you. Julian Long, Urban Programs Manager. This is regarding the special allocation of community development block grant funds we received through the Federal CARES Act. We received several rounds of this. The first round was used primarily to help businesses that were experiencing hardships at the very beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. One of those businesses assisted went out of business, unfortunately, and therefore that assistance had to be repaid to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, as the goal for those funds was not met in that situation. And that's the amount of $25,000. So that amount is now available to be reallocated. The Urban Programs Department is proposing that we reallocate to the United Way of Greater Nashua. Specifically, they have a program that refurbishes laptops, tablets, other technology for use of lower income households for things such as telehealth appointments, remote work, virtual schooling.
Okay, any questions from the committee members? Was that a hand? Did I see a hand?
yes, that's a hand.
Wrong one, though. Okay, Alderman Tibbetts, sorry.
Take one. Oh, thank you, Alderman Lopez. Mr. Long, I have a question about the CDBG grant. Is that in addition with United Way with the CAC grant?
Yes, ma'am. This is completely separate from CAC funds.
So did they apply, may I? Okay, did they apply for CAC as well? I didn't get the whole list.
Yes, ma'am, they did. I don't recall off the top of my head whether it's for this specific program. I can share, though, that the Urban Programs Department specifically reached out to United Way regarding this $25,000, as originally our round 4 funds, when those were allocated, those CARES Act funds, United Way was a recipient, but after that award was made, it was determined that the project was actually ineligible.
So, as a point of clarification for our following meeting, it might be good. Would it be possible for you to check the CAC and see what the United Way applied for? Because I know as a program with an organization with many programs, they may not have applied for the laptop program.
Yeah, I can look that up in about 5 minutes.
Okay, I thought so. So we might have more clarification on that point, Alderman Timmons, but for any individuals who would be here to speak in either testimony in favor or against, should it turn out that they are in fact applying for that in the CAC, and now we could still just, if we fund them through this, then we don't necessarily have to fund them through that. The CAC is what used to be called the Review and Comment Program. It's the mayor's allotments to different organizations. They have a pretty impressive review and ranking system, which I think we'll all wish we could do here when we have to review the CDBG funds. Any questions over here, Alderman Kelly?
I just wanted to know if the program that is being requested to reallocate was one of the programs that was in front of us last year when we did the CDBG funding plan, or if this is a new one?
Apologies, Urban Manager Long, I don't remember the answer to that either.
The answer is no. This is a new activity under contemplation.
Okay. Did we get any information like we normally do when someone applies for CDBG?
Pardon, what was?
Do we get any information?
Like an application, description of the program, all that stuff?
Yeah, like that's what we typically get.
Yes. So we did not do an application process for this. Instead, what we requested from United Way was a brief write-up of the project, and then we did an eligibility analysis based on that.
Okay, thank you.
One thing I would note is that I noticed an announcement from United Way already announcing that this program was being brought back, because it was really important. It was very well received and important during the pandemic. Particularly, we had a lot of students who didn't have access to Chromebooks or computers or that type of thing. So I think they're going to do it, whether we support it or not. The question is whether this money would be supportive of it. I would just remind everybody, though, that we can have a more thorough discussion when it comes to the actual meeting. And we're just mostly here for clarifying questions. Any questions, Alderman Thibodeau?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
What you just said
I'm
answered
all
it.
All right. Then we will proceed with the hearing part, the public hearing part. Thank you, Urban Manager Long. So now accepting any members of the public who'd like to make testimony in favor. Any members wishing to make testimony in opposition? Second round, anybody in favor? And testimony in opposition. All right, seeing there were actually no members of the public present, I just thought it'd be good to move on to the meeting. So this hearing is closed at 7:11 p.m. and we are moving on with our regular meeting, which opens with public comment.
Point of order.
Yes,
Are we being broadcast?
yes.
Oh,
We should
It
be.
doesn't appear to be, so.
That is a presentation that was meant to be presented. I don't know that our broadcast is usually shown on the computer.
It doesn't even seem like it's on. Does it?
Doesn't hurt to be thorough, though. Can I get a volunteer to run over to the TV booth and make sure that we're broadcasting?
You want-
Yep. Right over there, it's that first door on the right.
So they didn't just come in.
Knock on the door and make sure we're live. Yep, down this hallway over here.
Yeah,
Okay.
live.
I
Okay,
knew
thank
he
you.
was gonna, I was like,
Thank
I was
you.
waiting for him to,
Thanks, Chris.
Mission accomplished.
done.
To be candid, I didn't think there was any reason to believe we weren't, but once the question's asked, what am I gonna do? Be like, oh, no, I think we're fine. So,
Okay.
you gotta
I
check.
just want to know.
Yep, thank you for bringing that up, just in case. So, I didn't actually write down the time, 7:10 that I wrote out?
You said 7:11.
7:11, okay, good.
Seven.
Just making sure you're writing it down. All right, already ahead of the game with clerk. All right, so communications, Mr. Clerk.
Communication has been received from Julian Long, Urban Programs Manager, regarding Community Development Block Grant CARES Act Round 1 funding reallocation. Communication has been received from Julian Long, Urban Programs Manager, regarding Urban Programs Department updates, December 2023. And communication has been received from Julian Long, Urban Programs Manager, regarding CDBG home funding overview for HAC.
As this is the first meeting, I think I will observe, as I did previously, that I don't think Urban Manager Long likes to just send emails to us. He has them separate specifically so that they're easy to search. So anybody who's looking for information from this meeting will be able to find them as separate. Without objection, we will accept the communications and place them on file. Unfinished business,
None.
new business, resolutions.
We have Resolution R-24-001 relative to the acceptance of $26,800 from the State of New Hampshire Department of Safety into Police Grant Activity 2022 Homeland Security Grant Program Active Threat Training.
And I see we have someone to speak for it.
Yes, Kevin Psov, Nashua PD. I'm here to speak on behalf of the grant. Emily from Emergency Management had a prior commitment, and so we stepped in for her. This grant is for $26,800. It's a federal pass-through through Department of Homeland Security to the State Department of Safety. The funds will be used to backfill overtime for officers and fire personnel for two different things we're going to be doing with the funds. One is training NFR personnel on TEC, which is Tactical Emergency Critical Care. The second part of the funds will be used for training between the police department and the fire department on warm zone training during the active zone, active shooter training. So it'd be the warm zone area where they set up like a management type system to, so everyone's on the same page if we have some type of active shooter incident, we know what we're supposed to be doing, so. Those funds are due to expire September 29th of 2025. And there's no match.
Okay, so I think in context, those who were on the board last year might remember I think it was one of the last things we did was accept money for safety vests for firefighters. So I could imagine that maybe we're trying to enhance our response
Correct,
to
yes.
situations where someone is armed, where we can make sure the full 911 team is protected.
Not that. So the TEC part is the emergency care for, so even though our fire personnel, we have AMR that obviously renders first aid, majority of the time, fire and police sometimes arrive before the ambulance gets there. So we train them in it's almost like combat training. So you have your, gunshot wounds, stab wounds. It could be from an explosion, something like that, where that aid needs to be rendered immediately, and you can't wait for your medical personnel to show up. So that type of training, they learn how to do clot, sucking chest wounds, stuff like that, to not get too graphic. The second part with the active, the warm zone training is to train in the warm zone itself with the fire personnel. We train as a police department, we do it all the time with the school district. So we're pretty competent in active shooting. NFR is that's not their specialty, and so we need to train with them more in what to do when you have an active shooting incident, and then that warm zone is usually outside of the hot zone where the active shooter is, so it's another layer outside of that, so that's why it's called the warm zone. So it's a trained act.
That's very useful clarification to have, because I know I
Yeah.
get questions from constituents. For example, there was a standoff in proximity to, I think, Lead Street and Boys and Girls Club, which were affected by it, but that's because they were in the warm zone radius of it, not
Correct.
necessarily
That's
someone's
a good
running around.
example right there.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay. Any questions from members of the committee or comments? Alderman Timmons.
Oh, thank you, Officer Priscilla. I have a question. I'm glad it's with the fire and safety. Is that all the fire department, or is it
Yes.
just it
Yep, yeah.
is?
The way they train, I believe most of the time they train on duty, because they have, they'll put one firehouse out on service, and our guys will train them on the TECC during that time period, and their station will be covered by other personnel, so.
Okay. Can I have a follow-up?
Yeah.
The follow-up, so, do you know how many licenses or how many spots is in that particular?
So it's not a
fire?
license, it's every 2 years you get recertified in it,
Okay.
so the TECC is every 2 years.
Mhm.
So, and it's almost like getting certified in CPR. There's no card or anything like that, but it's they send it into, I would assume would be FEMA, that everyone was trained in CECC, so.
Okay.
I meant to point this out earlier, but just to clarify, no match means we're just getting money, right? We're not
Correct,
providing-
yep,
okay.
we'll get the
Right.
$26,000.
Figured the new members would love hearing that, and that's what we're always looking for. Any further questions? Seeing none.
I think we need a motion, actually.
Yep, I was going to make the motion, but.
Oh, go ahead.
Do it too. I would like to make a motion to recommend, now I'm confused, recommend final passage of this.
R24001.
Okay, good. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. We'll make our recommendation. It will be taken up before the next Board of Alderman meeting.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Have a good night.
Nine.
Mr. Clerk, what do we have next?
Next before us, we have R24003, amending the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development Consolidated Plan for fiscal years 2021 through 2025 to reallocate Round 1 CDBG-CV funding under the 2020 CARES Act. And I'll just go ahead and make a motion to recommend final passage of R24003.
All right, now there's the possibility that everybody used up their questions in the public comment, but Urban Manager Long, if you want to come up. Were you able to figure out whether they were applying for different programs?
Good evening. Yes, I was able to pull the grant application that they submitted for Citizens Advisory Commission funding for next year, and United Way is applying for funding for their Learn United program, which includes partially loaning out tablets, laptops, and other equipment, but also encompasses more than just that.
In light of that, is there a timeline, like a deadline for applying these funds?
For the CARES Act funds or the okay,
Because my understanding is the reason we're doing this is because one of our programs didn't work, and this is actually previous CDBG money. That's correct?
yes, that is correct. I believe we have until 2026 to expend the funds, but I would want to double check that.
As an opinion, I'm not ready to make a motion, but personally, I wouldn't mind seeing more opportunity for other programs to apply, just because there does seem to be a duplicate. As I understand the program, it's mostly donating laptops, refurbishing them, and then giving them back out. It wouldn't be terrible to have somebody from United Way be able to explain exactly what the $25,000 would be for, and it wouldn't be terrible for other programs that might be running, emergency programs right now to be able to have an opportunity to express what they would do with it. Alderman Timmons?
I think Lopez. I hate to say, I really love United Way. They do wonderful, wonderful things. I mean, nonstop. I'm a member of United Way. I do a lot of volunteering for United Way, but the double dipping, I'm a little concerned. It seems like it's that way. It may not be, but what you just, and you can clarify if I'm wrong, it seemed to be double dipping in two different pots of money, but with the same agenda. Is that correct, or I'm wrong?
The funding wouldn't be for the exact same usage. There is overlap between the two requests. Some possibilities here would be certainly if the Board of Aldermen approves this amount of funding, that would be communicated to the Citizens Advisory Commission. I also am staff liaison to that board, and inform them of which organizations also receive CDBG funding or have applied for CDBG funding, so they can be aware of that information as they make their funding decisions.
We have a
Alderman Kelly?
Yeah, I also have some concerns about going forward with this right away. I'm sort of interested in whether, if we don't have to do anything until 2026, could we potentially consider it when we look at all of the applications that we get from CDBG for this year?
Unfortunately, I don't think it is really possible because general CDBG funding doesn't have all the requirements that CARES Act funding does. The CARES Act CDBG funds have to tie into the prevention response to the COVID-19 pandemic, which general CDBG activities do not.
And so, if I could follow up, so what you're saying is this laptop program was something that came about during COVID because people were home and doing more remote things?
Yes, that's correct. And when we approached United Way, we discussed, is this something that you think is still viable and needed due to, ongoing concerns with the pandemic?
Okay.
If the committee wishes, though, we could put out a call for applications, and that new call for applications could be tailored to the requirements of the CDBG CARES funds.
I could potentially be open for that. I just think it's, I mean, 25,000 is a good chunk, and when we go through our typical CDBG, we do a lot of vetting, so, I love the United Way as well. I know that they're doing great work, but as Alderman Lopez pointed out, it'd be nice to hear from them a little bit more about the program and make sure we're being equitable in our choices.
I would also want to amend Alderman Timmons, because I know sometimes when you're trying to express something on the spot, like, it's a little hard. I think maybe contingency planning would be another way of describing it, because as somebody who has a background in nonprofit development, you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket if you care about the program at all, especially when it's a new one. So the sustainability plan would be to try to find multiple sources of something. In addition, this is sort of a windfall where we reached out to them. So they may not even have really considered when they applied their CAC that this would be available or a possibility at all. And ultimately, you kind of want to see which way the wind blows when it comes to applications, because you don't just give up on the program. If one person says no, you go to the next one. Is that a fair summary, Alderman Timmons?
All right, thank you, Alderman Lopez. I just, if you can, just out of the cup of your brain, which is, it's really great, Julian, but do you have an idea what they applied for on the CAC?
Yes. For the Learn United program, they describe it as having three main aspects, including one-on-one tutoring program, their school supply pantry, which provides supplies for schools in our district, and technology, which is the tablets, laptops, et cetera.
Yeah.
And that cost is how much?
One moment. The request that they've submitted is for $20,000 through the CAC funds.
So-
Alderman Timmons, you're the CAC representative, aren't you?
Yeah, that's why.
Okay, so you'll be seeing this in detail.
Yeah, I want to see, but I just want to know, because I don't want to just knock them off and say, no, you can't get this grant because you're getting this grant. I just want to compare the two, that's all.
Yep, that's fair. And I think one thing we could do is just table this for a month, give them a chance to figure out which one they want to do. CAC, their schedule is kicking in now, right? And as a member or a participant in that, both you and Alderman Timmons would be able to kind of, read the room in there and see how they're feeling too, I think, right?
Yes, sir. The CAC's next meeting is the next Wednesday, January 24th.
Now, Dave, do they this year have enough money for all of the applications?
No, sir.
So they're in the same boat as us with CDBG then?
I believe that we are still working with an estimate, not a final amount from the mayor's office, and that's in the realm of between 500,000 and 600,000 as usual, and the total amount of requests received is 1.3 million.
Sounds like a lot, but it goes really quickly. And typically, how many programs apply for the CAC versus CDBG? Can you just give a
Yes, so it's usually within the realm about 10 for CDBG, and much larger number apply for CAC. For that, you're looking around 40.
Can I infer from my own experience that that's largely because the CAC doesn't have quite as many restrictions on it as the CDBG money?
I would assume that's a large part of it. Also, possibly some of these agencies would not be eligible for CDBG funding.
Right.
And a lot of them are applying for operational expenses. Actually, almost all of them are applying for operating funds versus kind of bricks and mortar work. And we have a cap on CDBG at only 15% of the grant can be expended on those kind of operating expenses for nonprofits.
So on the one side for the nonprofits, they can't find a lot of places that will support operating expenses. But on our side, we're not necessarily going to let all of the applications in, only 15% of them, and a shortened number anyway. So it creates a pretty fierce competition.
Yes, yeah, it's certainly under public services, which is kind of those operating expenses. And just for clarity, especially for the new aldermen, that is by HUD statute. That's not something we as a city impose.
Yeah, and that was kind of what I was referring to with the restrictions, is HUD is Housing and Urban Development. It's a federally run program. The Community Development Block Grant is the CDBG aspect of it. And it doesn't even do just what we're doing here. There's a number of other applications of it too that take place So, does anyone want to make a motion? I would probably make a motion to table, but that's non-debatable, so we would, I don't want to shut
I'd
up.
like to make a motion table.
Okay, Alderman Timmons has made a motion to table this. Any particular time frame?
I would stay within the next Human Affairs, committee meeting. We should table it until then.
All right, so the motion would be to table this until the next Human Affairs meeting. That would give time for CAC to discuss it, for United Way to come on in if they want to and present on what they're working on, and us generally to have more information. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, so we're going to table this to our next meeting. Thank you for coming in, Urban Manager Long. Mr. Clerk, new business ordinances.
There are none.
This is our first meeting, tabled in committee.
There is none.
General discussion. As a general discussion item, this is the part where committee members can express things that can be discussed and gone back and forth. I have noticed that consistently it has been used as remarks by the aldermen. So general discussion, we discuss things. You introduce an idea and we have a conversation about it, we reach a resolution. Aldermanic comments, if you just want to review something, comment something, or make an announcement, we're not really supposed to be arguing with each other at that point. It's just comment, 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 comment. So with that context, this is our first organizing meeting of the year, so it might be a good idea for people to talk about things that they might want to see me stick on the agenda, or groups might want to invite. Anybody have any ideas or topics for discussion?
Manager Long has his hand up.
Manager Long, come on up here. I was sort of imagining members of the committee, but
Apologies, I do have some business present to the committee. CDBG grant applications for FY 2025, those were all received by mid-December. I want to ask when you would like to have the applicants come in to present before you. I believe traditionally your February meetings when that happens.
my opinion would be as soon as possible, because usually we're under some kind of crazy deadline to make decisions about the fate and future of all of this. Do we know what the HUD amount for CDBG is going to be? Last year there was like a delay.
Unfortunately, we do not. We are thinking that we're not going to receive the grant allocation until fairly late in the process this year, unfortunately, due to kind of how budget making is going at the federal level and all the continuing resolutions. So HUD has not released those numbers to us yet. We're working on, based on estimates, the numbers we're using is based on the current year awards, minus 15%. The thought there being that when we receive our actual numbers, hopefully they will be higher than that, and we'll be in the position of being able to give more money rather than taking money away.
So as a practical application of that, when people hear that the government is approaching a shutdown, or they have to negotiate a budget, or that type of thing, this is the direct result of that, is actual funding doesn't quite make it down to the federal.
That's
departments.
correct. HUD isn't able to do their formula calculations until there's a budget.
And yet, everyone at HUD is still busy at work and setting all these conditions that we better have our plan and all that stuff ready, even if we don't know actually exactly how much money we're going to get.
HUD did just release a waiver because they asked that we do not submit our action plan until there's real numbers. We're not required to submit until either our usual deadline, which is May 15th, or if that is less than 60 days after they release the award, we can release we can submit our plan up to 60 days after we receive our actual grant allocation for FY 25.
Okay, so we have a much bigger wiggle room here, but typically, you said earlier, I think you said 20 organizations usually apply for CDBG, or is that CAC?
It's about 10 for CDBG and about 40 for CAC.
Okay, so, I mean, it's up to the committee, but as far as the organizations that apply, if you imagine that there's 10 and you give three organizations 10 minutes each, that's 30 minutes a meeting. So we can have long meetings, which I love, or we could just start in February, then do one in March, and then do one in April.
Well,
Councilman Timmons.
Yes, but we want to have this all done by when? I mean, if we have 3 at each meeting, 369, maybe 4, that's 3 months we got.
Yep, 3 months, we would
3
be,
months. Is
we would
that enough
interviewed
time?
most of the applicants, and by April. And
By
the
April.
deadline described was May, but there's also a potential waiver for that?
Yes. Currently, I am working based on the May 15th assumption that is when we'll be submitting our final action plan, which includes the allocations for everyone we'll be funding. Based on that timeline, I would ask that perhaps you instead do presentations in February and March and vote on your recommendations in March. Because we need to have a second public hearing once there's actual allocations made and a public comments period.
So we're having long meetings anyway, so there.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I will restrain myself kind of from bringing in all of the other things that I typically like to do. I try to interview people, different organizations that are working on things like sober housing, on emergency housing. The Substandard Living Conditions Committee that we used to have was folded into this one. And then in general, I also try to give time for anybody who has a program or project that's regularly grant funded, that's very often like public health, to come and present on those different things. So as aldermen, when they come up, we know what we're voting on and what we're talking about. I will leave that alone for a while and maybe start doing that once CDBG is more or less wrapped up, unless an organization explicitly comes and says, we want to present on something because there's a time-sensitive thing and we want to make sure you guys know what's going on. So barring that, it sounds like the prudent course of action would be for us to invite organizations to start presenting on February and March, as you suggested, Urban Manager Long. Do you want to
Yes,
make
please.
a list of them, the ones that are going to apply, and reach out to them, or do you want to just invite them all and whoever says they can come, comes?
If it's acceptable committee, I can divide up slots evenly between your February and March meetings and then, have the agency select which meeting works best for them.
Okay. All right, so as long as we have that agreement, I just got my plan for the next 6 months too, so. Any specific topics, Alderman Kelly?
I was going to be a naysayer and say I like when we have them all kind of close together, because I think that the people who go in February are gonna be not less memorable, but you're going to have much more time in between when you've talked to them and when we start to make the decisions. But perhaps the way about it could be we have these broken up and then we have like a QA where if we have additional questions, those, all of the organizations can come back and we can ask questions.
It's also worth pointing out, this is an invitation, not a mandate, so if they don't want to show up for 2 meetings, then they can say, all right, no, I'm not going to do the February, March thing. I'll just show up at the QA, and if you have a question, that's when I'll answer it. And for that meeting, we probably would say, all right, well, that would be just the committee asking if someone can speak to something, not now you can come up and make your presentation that you didn't want to come to earlier. Do you think we could communicate that effectively?
I don't see why not.
Maybe more politely than I just phrased it, but
No, yes, that there'll be presentation opportunities and also more general Q&A. That's not presentation focused, certainly.
And that gives us a chance right before we make our decisions to kind of have a touch base. And I think a lot of times when we look at these, we evaluate, well, what would you do if you could only get half of it, right? If it's a bathroom or something, and those are kind of the questions that come up. And we have asked them historically by email, but if we could do a QA and people can come back, it allows us to get a little bit more of the full picture.
The presentations also allow the organizations to define who's actually applying. I remember a couple of years ago, we were accused of defunding the Girl Scouts, and no, we didn't. They applied 1 year, and then they didn't apply the next year, so looking at the budget, the person concluded we must have not given them funding. So I don't even think they've applied since then. But as an example, if we have a meeting in February and a meeting in March that we can point to and say, these are the applicants, these are what they're doing, it makes it clear to the public who's actually up for application and all that. And the applications were received in December, but does that mean the application period's closed?
Yes, sir, the application period is closed.
Okay, if somebody tried to reapply, would we have to redo some kind of process? Because I don't think we've had a public hearing yet.
I've been telling people that they can apply next year.
Okay. All right. Didn't we have a last minute application last year? I think Stepping Stones came in.
They applied within the window, but then after the application deadline passed, they submitted an amendment to their application.
Okay, snuck in with the amendment. So I guess you're responsible for any kind of wiggle room if there's a crisis or a last minute emergency that happens, but given the fact that we don't even know for sure exactly how much money's coming and when it's coming and all that, we do need to be nimble and to try to have organizations that have been preparing for this, organizing their annual plans and all that kind of stuff, and then presenting on them, and then have somebody coming in at the end. It'd have to be a very good reason. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we'll go with our general plan, I guess, and hopefully HUD will be quick. Just to reassure our newer aldermen, Urban Manager Long is not usually wrong about his estimates of when and how much. So we're not, I don't think we were off by millions and millions of dollars last year with the estimate.
No.
So we are working with a reasonable, educated guess as to how much we'll have available.
Yes, traditionally, the amount doesn't vary by huge margins year to year.
Okay. Any questions from our newer members?
I have,
Oh,
I have one other question. It's not the CDBG, it's the CAC. Is it the application process closed?
Yes, ma'am. Applications were due by January 12th.
Okay.
All right, any other topics of discussion? Seeing as no more. Okay, then, can I get a motion? Oh, remarks by the alderman. Oh, first, public comment. Any members of the public here who'd like to make public comment? Seeing none. Remarks by the alderman. Start over here, and then Kelly,
I'm good.
Alderman Thibodeau, Timmons.
I'm good.
All right, nothing to announce. Alderman Kelly.
Move to adjourn.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we are adjourned.
At 7:36.